king. God said, now Samuel, who is this prophet, you know, go and tell them they don't want a king. Yeah, we do. He said, okay, you want a king, this is what you're going to get. This will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. This is what God says. He will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots. This is 1 Samuel 8, starting at verse 11. He will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some will run before his chariots. And he will appoint captains over his thousands, and captains over his 50s, and will set some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers. And he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves, and give them to his servants. He will take from you and give it to his guys. He will take a tenth of your grain and your vintage and give it to his officers and servants. And he will take your male servants, your female servants, your finest young men and your donkeys, and put them to his work. And he will take a tenth of your sheep, and you will be his servants. What's the operative word here, folks? Take. That's what a king's going to do. Is he going to give? He's going to take from you and give to other people. Sounds familiar?
Yeah.
And you will cry out in that day because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves. You know how that verse ends? And the Lord will not hear you in that day. Now, that's a promise he made to Israel at that time. I'm not so sure if that's an ironclad promise he's making today, because you know what? I'm just going to keep fighting. Now, I'm a pastor, and it's okay for me to use the word hell in the right context, okay? I'm going to fight until hell freezes over, then I'm going to fight him on the ice. Okay? Because I don't want my 10-year-old daughter growing up in tyranny. You tell me when I'm done. Am I done? Q&A? Alright, I'm done. I want you to look very carefully at the other two pages, okay? The cheat notes are there. Biblical right to freedom of conscience. Make sure you read this and study this. Turn over the biblical basis for self-defense. Are we supposed to be a bunch of weak-kneed, sissy people who get beat up all the time? No. The most abused, overused, and abused verse in the Bible for pacifism is, well, we're supposed to turn the other cheek. In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus says if you get hit on the right, he says the right cheek, turn the other cheek. Now if I'm going to hit you on the right cheek, sir, point out your right cheek to me, please. There you go. Now most people are right-handed. I'm not going to hit this man. He'd knock me silly. I'm halfway there anyway. How could I possibly hit you on the right cheek with my right hand? I'd have to go like that, right? And we're not going to do that. The common thing would be to do what? Backhand. Which, I'm not going to knock you out with that. That is an insult. Can you bear an insult? I do it all the time. I do it every day, right? Jesus is teaching, yeah, you can bear an insult, okay? The rest of Scripture, please look at these passages. The Last Supper, Jesus said, from now on, if you have a sword, take some, whatever. If you don't have a sword, go sell something or get one. I looked it up in the Greek. The word for sword there means sword. It is a defensive weapon. It was a defensive weapon. One of the disciples said, look, Lord, here are 2 swords. And Jesus said, that's plenty. Now there were, what, 11, Judas had already left the room. There were 11 apostles there. He wasn't saying, go arm yourselves and overthrow the Roman government. He wasn't saying that. He was saying, look, there are bad guys, there are 4-footed varmints out there, and there are a lot of 2-footed varmints. You're going to need something to protect yourself. Paul in 1 Timothy 5:8 says, if a man will not provide for his own family, he is worse than an unbeliever and has denied the faith. Now, what do you do to provide for your own family? Food, clothing, shelter, and yes. It is good to defend the defenseless and to protect the innocent. I'm not talking about offense, I'm talking about defense. Okay? For the record, I wanted to say that and make that clear and plain. Okay, now I'm done, and now it's time for Q&A, right?
Right.
And if I don't know the answer, I will defer to Jim and Lisa. They'll know the answer for us. Okay.
Oh, you said that one question, famous Christian political theorist, you said Samuel Rutherford, John Locke, and who was the third one?
Well, actually, that was a typo. There are only two I had put in there. Like, one of the blanks is split up. There probably is a third. I just haven't found him yet. But 17th century, 1600s. And Samuel Rutherford wrote Lex Rex. Lex means law. Rex means king. Which means the law is over the king. Which is a biblical concept. That the law is, that all of us are held accountable under law. Okay? Under the biblical principles of good government. Yes, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
As an educator and a pastor as well,
Oh, wonderful!
and an activist, obviously,
Yay!
I'd like you to address the voluntary form of the 501c3 that muzzles the church from the IRS and all that goes with that. And why do most of the churches, even in my own denomination, in their book, Pastor, Church, and Law, they don't even mention this, which I think is a detriment to our country.
Yeah. Okay, I have a copy back there, which I'm going to give to you. Okay? It's by Webster, Chamberlain, and Bean. They are like the most top law firm in Washington, D.C. Okay? You can download all this information from the American Policy Roundtable website on the IRS, lovely, regulations on clergy and tax law. See, no one's saying that we can't say whatever we want to say. What they're saying is there are certain things, if you say them from the pulpit in your church building, then the IRS can revoke your 501c3 tax exempt status. They can revoke and make the church start paying gobs of taxes. Okay, so that's how they muzzle the church. Now here's the skinny on it. As a pastor, I can say anything I want to say and not worry about my church. I can say it here, I can say it there, I can say it at my house, I can say it in the parking lot of Target and whatever else. Okay? But in the pulpit, I cannot endorse a candidate, a human being. Okay? And I cannot endorse a political party. I cannot raise funds for a candidate or for a political party. That's it. Can I register people to vote? Oh, yes. Can I speak out on issues all day long? And the IRS cannot and will not touch me. They can try, but according to their own regulations, according to the rule of law, if we still have such a thing, they can't do anything. Can I say, congregation, issue 1 is a bad thing, man. Go out there in November and vote against issue 1. And here are all the yard signs right here in the church. Vote against issue 1. Can I do that? Absolutely I can, and I've done it. It's completely legal. It's totally legal. The IRS cannot touch you on that, Pastor. That goes for Catholic, Protestant, synagogues, mosques, whatever, Wiccan temples, you know, whatever you got out there. You can do that. Issues. Speak freely. All about it. Candidates, I cannot do that. Now, did I go and work for Jim Renacci later? Outside of my church building? Oh, yeah, I sure did. Yes, you have known. Yes, ma'am.
Does that include the healthcare law?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I spoke against the healthcare law.
Would you tell the Catholic Church?
I will meet with anybody. Bless your heart and bless their heart. I will meet with anybody because all you got to do, again, go to the APRoundtable.org website or call me. I'll give you my phone number. Okay, I'll give you my phone number. I've got cell phones Plural. These things are surgically removed every night, okay? Call me, and we will get the copy. I'll snail mail it to you, and you can hand it to your priest, to your bishop. You can send one to Pope Benedict.
How do you make them listen?
How do you make them listen?
It's a machine.
What?
I'm a good Catholic who wants to lead.
God bless your heart.
Politics.
You know what? That's your own personal decision.
This is the first time I said that. I don't know who's around.
That's your own personal decision. There are some people who choose to stay because if they leave, there ain't nobody left to do it. Others say, I've had it, I'm walking away. That's your decision.
They have a social justice committee that takes care of it. Janie, you can go join them. Yeah. They were sitting on the opposite side of the Renisi Bucheri thing.
Oh, Lord.
I was sitting next to this guy and said, are you friendly?
Okay.
I thought he was. He had a collar on.
I would give him this quote. Give him this quote. Okay? You all know this quote. First they came for the trade unionists, but I wasn't a trade unionist, so I said nothing. Then they came for the communists, but I wasn't a communist, so I said nothing. Then they came for the Jews. I wasn't a Jew, so I said nothing. They came for the gypsies. I wasn't a gypsy. Then they came for the Catholics. Well, I wasn't a Catholic, so I said nothing. Then they came for the Protestants. And this is what Protestant minister said. And they came for me. By that time, there's nobody left to say anything for anybody. If they don't listen, ma'am, if they don't, you go on to the next person who will. You will find somebody who will listen, and then you start your own group and infiltrate, overwhelm them, whatever. Listen, the last election taught me one thing. Where was George Soros? George Soros! He's got gazillions and billions and gazillions and billions of dollars, and he owns everything. You know what, folks? There's still a God in heaven who holds rebellious mankind in derision. Now, we are in a peck of trouble. You've got $15 trillion in the hole. And all the smartest goobers in Washington, D.C. are not going to figure this one out. That's why if we get out of this thing, it's going to be such a miracle that no politician in his right mind, well, that's a stretch, isn't it, can possibly claim credit for this. It's going to be a God thing, but it's going to be you and me getting on our knees and humbly repenting before a holy God and saying, I screwed up! Yeah. I screwed up! I didn't teach my kids! I didn't teach my grandchildren! I pawned them off onto somebody else who was only so happy to teach them socialism. I was like Israel saying, I don't want to have my responsibility. I want to have a king to do it all for me. Huh? Look at the mess they made. Look at the mess I made. I thought after 1994, everything was going to be fine. I thought after 2000, 2004, everything's going to be fine. And I thought all the communists went away after the Soviet Union fell. I was wrong. I'm sorry, I'm taking up too much time. More questions? Yes, ma'am. Or maybe we ran out of tape. I don't know. Tape. Here I am still in the 1980s. Man, everything's digital.
You said that churches aren't allowed to support a candidate. What about Al Sharpton and Reverend Wright? How do they get away with it?
How do they get away with it? You will have to answer that one yourself. And there are churches who pass the hat, various and sundry, many different kinds of churches, and somehow under the radar they get away with it. But you know what? Everybody eventually has their comeuppance. And you cannot continue to think badly and do bad things indefinitely without your comeuppance. It is all going to bite you eventually. Okay? What you said, there's probably a lot of truth to that in many different churches across our land, but they're going to get it eventually, and I mean legally and peacefully, okay? Eventually, I got to believe that. I know that I'm supposed to obey the law, and I do. And I do. Other questions?
One last question.
Yeah, this is a follow-up on that specific subject.
Yes, sir.
I see that as the core of the issue. The church, prior to, I think it was 54 or whatever, was non-taxable anyway.
That's correct.
So the church, in a sense, is the problem where they decide to come under the IRS, as opposed to say, we don't want your tax exemption, we are non-taxable in the first place. Can you address that the church doesn't even go there in the first place?
Well, you know, the law is what it is now. And you're free as a pastor, as a congregation, whatever, to say, you know what, I don't care what the IRS says, we're going to go and endorse so-and-so. Come and get us. Now, there's some churches in Tennessee who this year decided to do that. 100 churches at least decided to do that across the denominational landscape. And they said, and they sent letters to the IRS saying, come and get us. So if you're going to do civil disobedience, you also have to be willing to pay. Which means you're going to have to pay the penalty, gobs of money, and maybe even go to jail, perhaps. Just want you to know that. By the way, the guy who set up these IRS regulations and so forth, the man that you can thank for muzzling churches like that, was Lyndon Johnson. 1954 when he was in Congress. And there's a lot about that in the document that I will put into your hands. And anybody else, you just call me and I'll get it to you. Okay? You call me or email me and I will get it to you. We're done?
Yeah.
And I'm going to be sticking around back there, okay? I'm taking my time. You come talk to me.
Jeff, thank you so much. Give them a round of applause. We have a few more announcements. Michael Marsh is here from Parma, and we'd like to, yeah, you can go on up to the podium. That'd be great. The elector.
Good morning. I usually don't need a microphone, but I will avail myself of the statement that my voice is here to gone. So if you don't mind me speaking at you for a second. 2 comments on what I've heard this morning. When he was going through the communist governments and he was listing them off, someone said Cleveland. You're not far off. And the question in the back there, how did Sharpton and Jesse Jackson get away with it? I'll just say this little word: liberation theology, collective salvation. Something terrible happened in the 1960s. By the way, my name is Mike Marsh. I'm running for City Council in Ward 4, Parma. I grew up in the household of a history teacher. My dad taught high school in Niagara Falls, New York for over 30 years. So you can imagine sitting around our table, the discussions we had as we grew up. I had to learn history whether I liked it or not. History, not propaganda. My father used to say something. He used to say the 1960s were a terrible, terrible, terrible time.
I remember them.
He used to refer to Woodstock as being just a social mess. How many of you agree with that? Well, if you look at what happened, not only with Woodstock in America, if you take a look at what happened around the globe during that time, you'll learn about liberation theology in South America, collective salvation, how it was born, and basically when they bring socialistic ideas into the minority and black churches in America, and that's how they get away with it right there. I've scratched my head about that for years. How in the world are you, a reverend, standing up and preaching basically a lot of political garbage in churches all over America? How is it Bill Clinton goes to churches and gives political speeches, but when a Republican does it, stands up, anybody on the right does it, oh my goodness, separation of church and state, we all have a meltdown. It's because they're not saying the right things. Liberation theology and collective salvation. That's my little blurb to add to the discussion today. What I wanted to talk to you about is I'm running for Ward 4 in Parma, and just to the north of us here, and you may wonder, what's that got to do with me down here in Medina County? As Parma goes, the 8th largest city in the state. How many of you knew that? Parma was the 8th largest city in the state of Ohio. As Parma goes, so goes Cuyahoga County. As Cuyahoga County goes, so goes the state of Ohio. As the state of Ohio goes, possibly so goes the White House. Yes. Hello? Yeah. Okay? All politics is what? Local? Okay? Now, let me just tell you what's going on up in Parma. For those of you who aren't on the ground up there and don't really know what's happening. Some of you may remember me, we were active in the Corrigan campaign for Congress. Since then, I haven't been down here in a year, but since then I've had a column that I write monthly in the Parma Observer called Thoughts on the State of Things. How many of you have seen those going through the emails? But that's widely read up there. This is what's happening in Parma. And why we have, well, I'll just start right here. Our mayor, who served 2 terms, decided and wrote a letter to the people of, a select few of people of Parma back in January, that he was not going to seek a 3rd term. An article came out in the Plain Dealer linking him to the corruption with Jimmy DeMora and Frank Rousseau, an item of value passed between them. And that's all the paper said. More to come.
Money? Parma.
In the 2004 mayoral race, he paid a man $20,000 a year to not run against him. $20,000 of our money as taxpayers. Okay? Corruption throughout the city of Parma. Everybody on the same page? Now, you have in Parma today 4 people standing out to run for mayor. They're all the same person, doesn't matter which one you get. Ron Model, Chuck Germana, Tim DeGeeter. Okay, come on. These are all the same old stale names we've heard for years in Parma. There is no other voice on that level. There is nobody else running as a conservative. We're going to get another liberal Democrat, possibly corrupt mayor, someone cut from the same paper as the other guys at the mayor's level. Here's the breakdown in Parma, and here's what we were up against with Pete Corrigan for Congress. How many of you know we almost won? How many of you know how close we came to putting Corrigan in Congress and ending Dennis Kucinich's career, at least in District 10?
Good for you.
We came so close, and it was a grassroots, door-to-door effort. I'm telling you, battle in the streets, knocking on doors and talking to person to person to person to person to person. We didn't have fancy flyers. We were running off. I was running off stuff on my printer at home and walking around the streets campaigning for Corrigan. Here's what you have in Parma. If there's 10 people, you have 4 who are Democrats, 1 who's a Republican, and 5 who are independent. Is someone working the math in their head? The question is, why do you have 5 independents in Parma? Anybody want to gander an answer to that?
Yeah, they're tired of both parties. Yeah.
They're tired of one party. Parma hasn't had a conservative voice in probably 35 years. Where else are they going to turn? They look at the Democrats and they say, you know, I can't handle that. Especially now with all the corruption. They go, man, I really can't handle that. I don't want to vote for another Democrat. There's no one else on the ballot. So 5 out of 10 people just step back and say, you know what? I'm an independent now. I just don't care. I'm just not going to participate. Then you got one person who watches Glenn Beck and Fox News and screams at his television set. And in his living room, you'll find broken pieces of remote controls because he's whipped them all at the TV, yelling and screaming. He's so frustrated he hasn't found a voice. Ladies and gentlemen, that used to be me. Okay, about 2 years ago, that was me. And I was wondering, had I lost my mind? Here I live in Parma. And Parma is nuts. Okay? We had police officers up there in 2004 making $170,000 a year. Reporting overtime that they had never worked. You talk about corruption. Now listen to me closely. Here's what I want to say to you. There are 3 councilmen right now in the city council in Parma who legally cannot hold that position because they work for the county by day. Okay? No one has checked them. Now, those of you who maybe aren't paying attention to what's going on in Cuyahoga County, last November, we put in a new county government. They elected Ed Fitzgerald, another Democrat name from the old stale list. The FBI is crawling all over the county. There's a list of about 430 people, of which they've indicted already over 100. How many of you know Bridget McCafferty? Okay? The political machine up there is quiet. They're running for cover. In Parma, we have 3 councilmen who cannot hold the position as councilmen. One of them is right in Ward 4. What am I saying to you this morning? I have a chance to win in Ward 4. There's another guy as an independent who stepped up, and he's a socialist. He's weird. I can't wait to get out in the street and fight with this guy. Okay, door to door, and take the message door to door. There is an opportunity right now in Parma to make a difference. By the way, just to your north, I'm also a co-founder of the Parma Patriots. We're celebrating 1 year tomorrow night. 1 year. We started out as a ragtag group, maybe 8, 10 people, and now we're up to 65. Why am I here this morning?